Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, colleagues. Welcome to the Global Coalition to Address Synthetic Drug Threats. My name is Brian Morales, and this is Sub-Working Group 2.2, the final session for today. I am going to share my screen so we can get started. Thank you very much. And put this in presentation mode. And my apologies, I have to rewind. We have 155 countries now participating in the coalition, with Niger being our most recent addition, 1,500 participants, and our coalition continues to grow and expand. This month on the public health side, we are going to have civil society presenting. We've had private sector on this side as well. Presenting this month for this working groups 1 and 2. And I want to express that the presenters may be from private sector or civil society, but the participants are actually still the government representatives that have been participating in the other sections. For our usual practice, we'll be recording the presentations, but not the discussion. Now, we enter an important period in the coalition's work. In this phase of the coalition, we are requesting that participants report on actions that have been taken to address synthetic drug threats. We have already reached out through our US embassies in your countries to your foreign ministries to request that these actions be shared with us in a report. And we are sharing the reporting process with all of you here today in the next few slides. We will send you an official letter as well that will request the report of your actions. And these actions will be shared on our website, and some of the content will also be shared in the Year 1 report. So what can we put in this report that we are requesting from each of the participating countries? First, the adoption of a new practice, a policy, a strategy, a regulation, or a law. Any of these that have been, and I should clarify that the period that we're looking for is from July 7th of last year, when the ministerial launched this coalition, through what is anticipated through September of this year, just before the UN General Assembly, which is where we intend to share this report. Second, you can also report any new engagements that have been launched or any new collaborations that have been launched with the private sector. Third, any financial support that has been provided bilaterally, including through international organization partners, or any in-kind assistance to support and building the capacity of countries to advance an initiative on synthetic drugs. Fourth, if you have hosted or are planning to host a regional or global meeting of the coalition on a thematic area of interest. Fifth, expression of interest in any of the specific initiatives that have been posted on the Global Coalition menu. So there are about 120 of them now from the international organization partners. That any expression in one or more of these would also be an action. And finally, any other act that can strengthen your country's response to synthetic drugs that you have taken or are planning to take, consistent with the recommendations of the coalition. So what are the parameters of the report? We're asking that the reports from all of you be no longer than 2 pages maximum. The format could be either in Microsoft Word or in an email so that we can easily copy and paste that into the report and onto the website. We prefer it to be in English, but we will accept it in any language as well. And we are requesting that the information be submitted to us by the deadline of the 3rd of June. Please email your submissions to syntheticscoalition@state.gov. This will all be in the formal letter as well that is coming to you. You might ask, where are the recommendations? They have been posted on our website. If you go to the timeline, you can see an orange bar that says Final Key Recommendations, May 3rd. And when you click on the hyperlink, you will receive the document with the 68 recommendations. Finally, I will end in saying that we are coming toward the final opportunities to present in the coalition's monthly meetings. The final coalition monthly meeting will take place, the working group meeting in September. The final sub-working group meeting will take place in August. So we just have a few more monthly sessions. If you are interested in presenting in an upcoming session, please contact us as soon as possible at syntheticscoalition@state.gov. So that is all for me today. Happy to take any questions in the chat and by email. And I will stop sharing my screen now and turn it over to our co-chairs for today's meeting. We have Jenny Fagua and Amy Torrichel, Craig Wright, Charlotte Wilderman from the Office of Health Improvement in the UK. So over to our colleague. I'll turn it over to Jenny Fagua to begin leading the session for today. Thank you so much.
Gracias. Muchas gracias. Bueno, un saludo muy especial para todos desde Bogotá, Colombia. Reiteramos la bienvenida a todos a la sesión del subgrupo 2.2 del Grupo de Trabajo de la Coalición Global para la Amenaza frente a las Drogas Sintéticas. Estamos entonces en nuestra sesión del mes de mayo. También un saludo a todos los participantes, a los delegados de cientos de países que nos acompañan, como lo mencionó Brian, que esta coalición va creciendo en el número de países que se han vinculado. Y también un saludo muy especial a nuestros colegas, colíderes de este subgrupo de Reino Unido. Siguiendo entonces la agenda propuesta, vamos a dar paso al desarrollo de los dos temas acordados. Hoy tendremos dos presentaciones para continuar mejorando los conocimientos, las competencias y compartiendo, intercambiando experiencias sobre las iniciativas que hay a nivel global sobre el tema de las drogas sintéticas. Para arrancar, entonces, vamos a tener una presentación sobre contextualización de los desafíos de las drogas sintéticas, perspectivas del Índice Mundial de Crimen Organizado, que estará a cargo de Jason Egli. Jason es un líder temático, experto principal. Él hace parte de la Iniciativa Global contra el Crimen Organizado Transnacional. Jason es un analista de políticas y mercados de drogas ilícitas que ha investigado, desarrollado y dirigido iniciativas de asistencia y cooperación técnica que abordan las drogas ilícitas en geografías africanas y asiáticas. Su experiencia se centra en comprender los contextos y las características que influyen en los comportamientos de uso de drogas y la resiliencia estructural de los entornos del comercio de drogas, particularmente en lo que estos factores se relacionan con el desarrollo y la sostenibilidad del daño. Entonces, le damos la bienvenida a Jason y ya puedes entonces abrir el micrófono.
Thank you very much. It's my pleasure.
We can see your slides. Please go ahead.
I'm sorry?
We can see your slides. Please go ahead.
Okay, thank you. I was going to.
Sí vemos.
It's my pleasure to have the opportunity to speak to you here today in this a very important global coalition. And in the amount of time that I have allocated to me, I would like to introduce to you some of the findings that we've drawn out of a recent global survey that we do as part of the Global Initiative Against Transnational Organized Crime. So in 2019, we started a process of trying to examine criminal markets in countries around the world. We started with Africa as a way of trying to initiate the methodology going forward on this. 2 years following that, in 2021, we incorporated all 193 member states of the UN into the assessment, and the subsequent biannual assessment was completed just last year, the most recent one, in November 2023. So I will show you three maps, and by way of these three maps, I'm hoping to introduce you to three contextual themes that are drawn out of the data and that characterize the synthetic drug market threat in the world today. So the first map here shows us that synthetic drugs and synthetic drug markets are far more pervasive globally than perhaps many of us realize. This is a map that shows the presence and severity of synthetic drug markets by country for the year 2023. You can see the legend on the left gives you an indication of severity. The map is derived from data drawn from the most recent survey that I mentioned, and the index in 2023 contained an evaluation of 15 different criminal markets. 4 of those markets were drugs, one of which was synthetic drugs. It examined also 5 criminal actor types and 12 indicators of resilience. Not only does the index look at the impact of criminal markets, it also looks at the ability of states to respond to these negative impacts. Now, you can find all of the index data, both used for this presentation, but also more broadly, including a deep discussion on the methodology and assessment metrics for free on the website ocindex.net. Unfortunately, I don't have time to go through that component here today. So in the index, all 193 UN member states were assessed, and let's consider the results only for synthetic drug criminal markets for our discussion today. 187 of the 193 countries assessed were found to have a synthetics market that negatively influenced their society in some way. In fact, synthetic drug markets were found to be more pervasive globally than even those markets for heroin. 22 countries, shown here in red, were assessed as being severe, which is the highest ranking, meaning they possess a synthetic drug market that has a negative impact on all parts of society. That market is highly profitable, and it accrues significant value from the country's domestic economy. Another 48 countries, here colored in orange, were assessed as being significant, which means that the negative impacts are slightly less severe than those that exist for the red countries. Thus, 70 countries globally, or more than 1/3 of the total, have synthetic drug market criminality scores in the highest 2 bands of concern, a fact that might surprise some of you, but should generate serious concern from all of us. The second map shows us that the negative impact of synthetic drug markets on countries and their populations continues to worsen. If there's one thing I could say about this map, it's that really it should scare us. This is a map that shows how the synthetic drug markets in each country changed in the 2-year period from 2021 to 2023. It's rather simple, really. In the 2-year interval between the last 2 biannual assessment periods, one of 3 things could happen. The market could decrease in severity, it could remain stable at its 2021 level, or it could grow in its negative impact. So what does this map show us? It shows us that globally, the breadth and depth of synthetic drug markets impact expanded significantly in the 2 years from 2021 to 2023. Of the 4 drug markets assessed in the index, the other 3 being cocaine, heroin, and cannabis, over this period, it was synthetics that grew the most. 100 countries, shown here in red, saw their synthetic drug market score increase in this 2-year period. This means their synthetic drug market worsened. In other words, its impact became more severe. At the opposite end of this spectrum, only 12 countries, shown here in green, many of which are small island states, saw their synthetic drug market severity decline in this period. 81 others, shown in orange, saw their market remain stable, although 20 of these countries retained their stability at the highest 2 bands of significant or severe, so the highest 2 bands of negative impact. Thus, to put it another way, in 2023, a total of 120 countries were adjudged to possess a domestic synthetic drugs market that experienced a worsening or a stabilization at a very negative level of impact and harm over the previous 2 years. What does this mean? In our assessment, it means that the global synthetic drug situation is worsening and doing so widely and rapidly. This third map shows us that the inability of a significant proportion of the world's countries to respond appropriately and effectively to the harms of synthetic drug markets, so in other words, the resilience of these nations, is a primary concern going forward. One of the unique things about the Global Organized Crime Index is that not only did it assess a series of criminal markets in a country, but it also assesses 12 resilience indicators for a country. These indicators represent the political, legal, economic, social spheres of society and the state, which, when taken together, measure the potential of the country to provide holistic and effective responses to these criminal markets and their harms. This map shows the average resilience score per country, a score derived from the average across the 12 resilience indicators for each of the 187 synthetic drug market countries. Countries in red and orange are those with the weakest resilience capacities. Those in green have frameworks that are adjudged to be sufficient to address market harms, and those in blue are both sufficient and effective in responding to the harms of the synthetic drug market. You may recall that I mentioned earlier a total of 70 countries were assessed as having a synthetic drugs market that was ranked as either significant or severe in its impact, the two worst categories. In the context of resilience to harm, 58 of this subset of 70 countries were found to have a resilience factor that was rated in the lowest two categories, meaning the capabilities of these 58 countries to respond to and mitigate the harms of their synthetic drug markets are, at best, exceedingly weak. It is here in this measure that we find one of the most significant concerns confronting us today as we attempt to get to grips with the global synthetic drug crisis. And that concern is grounded in the significant incapacities of resilience to harm that befall the majority of global states afflicted by synthetic drug markets. By way of a final slide, I think it's important for us to consider also an additional element. Deeper concern going forward rests also in the criminalized structural influence and resilience deficiencies identified among the 10 countries with both the highest level of synthetic drug market influence and the lowest level of resilience capacities in place to respond to that. How do we mitigate the security challenges that these marketplaces present to their regional and global neighbors? Added concern rests also in the potential role that the environments in these states might play in furthering some of the more nefarious threats evolving from a rapidly expanding global synthetics drug marketplace. These threats go beyond the public health sphere and embrace regional and global security concerns. Thank you for your attention.
Muchísimas gracias por la excelente presentación, Jason. Un tema muy interesante. Acá estuvimos pendientes de, digamos, desde Colombia, de donde nos veíamos. Creo que ha sido un trabajo muy interesante. Creo que sería también interesante poder acceder al documento, a la información complementaria que da sustento a los cálculos, a las estimaciones, a los mapas, pero se ve, digamos, además una transformación bien interesante y bien importante con el transcurso de los años, que llama la atención sobre realmente cómo se configura esta amenaza global de drogas sintéticas. Quisiéramos darle paso a nuestros colegas de Reino Unido, a Emi o Charlotte. Bueno, parece que algo pasa con nuestros colíderes del subgrupo en Reino Unido, tal vez algún problema de comunicación. Dado que aquí estamos desde Colombia también, como con mi compañero Diego Sánchez, con quienes juntos hacemos el coliderazgo de este subgrupo 2.2, entonces le quisiera dar la palabra a Diego para hacer la introducción del tema siguiente.
Gracias. En este segundo espacio tenemos la presentación desde la Junta Internacional de Fiscalización de Estupefacientes, JIFE, En este espacio nos van a mostrar el proyecto ION, Operaciones Internacionales contra las Nuevas Sustancias Psicoactivas. Es una iniciativa operacional de carácter internacional de la JIFE y ha puesto en marcha para prestar asistencia a las autoridades nacionales en sus esfuerzos para impedir la entrada en los mercados de consumo de las nuevas sustancias psicoactivas no sometidas a fiscalización y que son objeto de uso indebido. Este proyecto ION se centra específicamente en las nuevas sustancias psicoactivas cuya utilización con fines médicos, científicos e industriales es escasa o desconocidas. Las actividades del proyecto ION de la JIFE consisten principalmente en coordinar, recopilar y comunicar información de carácter estratégico y operacional relativas al envío, al tráfico, a la fabricación y a la producción de sospechosas nuevas sustancias psicoactivas. En este espacio queremos darle la palabra a Matt News del proyecto ION. Matt, tienes la palabra.
Good morning. Hopefully you can hear me. Good afternoon, good evening for everybody. Okay, good. I see head shaking. That's a good sign. Excellent. I'm Matt Nice. I'm with the International Narcotics Control Board. I'm talking to you from our Vienna Targeting Center in Austria. And I will give a brief presentation on some of the tools and how we link real-time intel, both with our private sector partners as well as government enforcement counterparts. So thank you very much to the Global Coalition for putting on these excellent coalition meetings where a lot of information gets exchanged. And hopefully we'll be able to see my presentation here as I switch over. Okay, let's see if this works. Let me know if you can see the presentation, and I'm going to go full screen. Jump in if you cannot see the presentation full screen. Is it full screen? Yes, excellent. Okay, fantastic. So again, my name is Matt Nice, and again, thank you for having me here at the Global Coalition to address synthetic drug threats.
Hey, Matt,
I'm
you
with
may
the
want to go
Internet-
to your presentation mode. Excuse me.
Okay, it's on the opposite screen. So let me see if I can switch over here. I apologize. 1 second. Share, and we will try this one more time. I'm on dual monitors, so it wants to. Let's see if that works. Now you should see a big screen, hopefully. There, I see head nods. Excellent. Okay.
Perfect.
Perfect. All right, I'll continue.
Sí, funciona.
Let me know if I speak too quickly. I tend to get excited when I have the opportunity to talk about the work that the International Narcotics Control Board does. For those who aren't aware, INCB, or Jefe in Spanish, is an independent United Nations body. It's been around actually before the United Nations even existed, but its primary purpose is to ensure the adequate availability of narcotic drugs, psychotropic substances, as well as precursor chemicals for legitimate use. And in that same vein, also to ensure that diversion of those substances does not happen. Now, I head up the GRIDS program, and that program is focused primarily on synthetic drugs, new psychoactive substances, and related substances that are emerging on the market. And that's what a lot of the discussion has been over the last few months with the coalition related to new substances which are emerging on that market. And the GRIDS program really consolidates a number of operational projects under the board, which have been ongoing for several years. So in fact, this year, we're actually celebrating 10 years of the Project ION Ionics communication platform, and I'll talk about what that does in a minute. But that is really the backbone of all the work that we do here. Just making sure, there we go, excellent. This is just a brief timeline of the board's work. And I think the important part to outline here is that the board operates within the UN treaty mandates that are given to it. And those treaties are from the 61, 71, and 88. And the important part here to keep in mind is that back then when those treaties were being discussed or implemented, no one was thinking about on-demand synthetic drug manufacture or online sales or next-day delivery globally. And that is really a challenge in a system that is designed not to function that way. So through the mandate of the board has maintained engagement and dialogue with member states, and it ensures that all under the 61, 71, and 88 convention. That means all narcotic drugs, psychotropic substances, and precursor chemicals used to make those substances go through the board. So all your commercial transactions are securely and confidentially maintained through the board. In addition, through its treaty mandate, the board also engages governments and facilitates exchange of information through a variety of proprietary tools. So these are things like the PEN Online system, or the Precursor Incident Communication System, the IONIX system, the GRIDS intelligence platforms. So these systems are available to governments so that they can facilitate real-time exchange of information to either ensure legitimate shipments of chemicals and drugs, or to ensure that when cases of diversion or trafficking happen, that information can get to the right authorities globally as quickly as possible.
And
we
Matt,
primarily
my apologies, interpreter is asking you to slow down, please.
slow down. Understood. Thank you. We primarily focus on two streams of information of the GRIDS program. One stream of information on the left-hand side here is to ensure that law enforcement and regulatory enforcement can get real-time information on suspicious shipments or seizures. So if a seizure is stopped by police in one country, customs could be notified in another country, or vice versa. If a postal inspector detects a substance in a postal consignment, that information might get back to a drug regulatory agency in the origin country. Okay, so we're agnostic to which government enforcement agencies can access it as long as they have a need. Secondary to that, we also ensure that the similar information can flow through our trusted private sector networks. In other words, we bring in chemical companies, we bring in the marketing and online sales companies, we bring in the monetization, and we bring them together so that they too can exchange information. So 2 months ago, we held the first UN Global Tech Against Trafficking event in Vienna, where we brought together some 100 or so companies and countries so that they could facilitate information exchange between the biggest social media, online search engines, as well as payment platforms with government counterparts to ensure that they're not exploited and that governments can help support flowing trade. To do that, we have a footprint of what we call regional technical officers, and they are located in key locations around the world. We have 7 of those, and they're able to communicate through the Global Targeting Center, which is our GC3 Cyber Communication Center here in Vienna, where I'm sitting. And those locations in Mexico cover all of Latin America, as well as our location in Nigeria, which covers West Central Africa, Egypt, which covers Middle East and North Africa, and our Kazakhstan, which covers Central Asia, as well as Pakistan. South Asia is covered in our India office. And you recall last week, we had Sheila Kamdar, who is our regional technical officer, who gave a presentation on how they work at the grass level for the RTOs, as well as our officers in our Bangkok office. And those allow us to communicate and consolidate with our partners at the World Customs Organization, as well as the Universal Postal Union, to help facilitate global information exchange through those networks. Now, at the heart of that is the IONIX system, which I said this year is 10 years old. That system facilitates an actual suite of targeting tools, not just IONIX as a communication platform, but also targeting systems with GRIDS intelligence, with our GRIDS targeting assist, hopefully with the rollout of the Snoop targeting system, and hopefully in the future, the ping system. Each one of these systems provides governments the ability to identify, detect, and dismantle organized crime groups with synthetic drugs nexuses globally. And those RTOs help to facilitate that work. If we look, for example, at IONIX, the backbone of all of our system, this is a real-time communication platform that operates in 130 languages globally. It has been in operation for 10 years, and there are more than 90,000 exchanges of importer, exporter, shipper targets and seizures in this system. It was designed to work in very low bandwidth environments, so you can work on very remote border areas. And it also acts as the central suite for access to the other tools, which I'll talk about shortly. Key to those are probably the GRIDS intelligence, strategic, and operational targeting tools. These work on both mobile systems as well as desktop systems, and they allow for real-time profiling and risk assessment of consignments across all of the 90,000 plus incidents that flow through the Ionix platform. They allow a user to map them in real time and identify consignment size, modality, and inbound, outbound characteristics based on information that all the governments put into the Ionix platform. So those communications go through and they're visualized using grids intelligence, as you can see here. How that works in reality is it helps to address one of the big problems. So besides low bandwidth, besides capacity to identify these substances, which we've heard several examples of, we utilize grids intelligence to help when an interdiction happens, particularly for an interdiction of a new substance. So for this example here is an actual example that we had recently, where you have a substance or a group of different substances, in this particular case, in an express consignment, very common. And as you can see from the sample on the left, one of the substances is marked on the packaging as FDCK. Now, most people don't know what that is because they're not chemists. Frontline officers are the same way. However, that information can be entered into the GRID's intelligence system or into Ionix. And what you will receive then is a breakdown of all of the countries that are currently talking about seizures or suspicious shipments involving those substances. So even though you don't know that this is a ketamine derivative, you can see what other countries have identified it as, and that can immediately help you to identify whether further actions need to be taken. It's extremely, extremely useful, particularly since Raman scanners may not have an updated library, or you might have concentrations so low of certain substances that you might not, for example, get a positive identification at the field, even though it looks suspicious. So this information is provided globally real time across governments around the world, and it allows other governments to see what they are seeing, and that allows them to protect themselves without having to wait for a forensics profile to come back from a lab, which, assuming they had a reference sample for, could take months. Additionally, Snoop is a tool we've been using in-house to monitor the board's list of substances with no known legitimate use. Currently, the board has 3 of those lists, and those started originally with fentanyls. But as we had heard from our colleagues at CFSRE a little earlier, there's been a large decline in fentanyl and fentanyl-related substances over the years emerging on the scene. What we see more are a variety of other substances, such as emerging nitazene substances, as well as some next-generation benzodiazepines. What Snoop allows us to do is to take those lists and identify when a new marketplace emerges to try to sell those substances. It allows us to put that information together, whether it's a product such as a fentanyl or perhaps one of the chemicals that might be used in the manufacture of those substances. And it allows us to consolidate the information across marketplaces around the world. It allows us to group that information, and it allows us to identify context as well as account information related to those online marketplaces. And that's very useful for national systems where you might utilize the phone number or say an email address of an online marketplace to help link to additional cases that you may be working on. And how we use that with our private sector partners is to take that information and to help pull those marketplaces offline. So as a new market emerges, say on Mercado Libre, we flag that information and we get it back to our partners at Mercado Libre through the governments so that they have that information and they can then remove that online. The other thing that we do is we utilize this information with tools such as GRID's Targeting Assist to provide us additional information that links cases. So, for example, if you go online to try to buy something online, say a tie, and you don't have the exact tie you want, most companies automatically will link your selection with available merchandise, such as other ties. So while you may not have gotten the ones you wanted, it links ones that look very similar in many, many respects to what you had wanted. GRID's Targeting Assist does the same thing. It takes an initial linkage that an analyst, say a government investigator, may find, and what it does is it augments against those 90,000 communications and the hundreds of communications that come each day, and then links those back automatically. So that instead of one target, you're offered a large variety of targets of related cases which the human analyst can't see, but the computer can, because we utilize large-scale data models. Now, we've been using this system for the last 2 years in-house, and it allows us to link about 70 more targets for every 100 targets we pull together, which means that we're able to identify cases and linkages across a variety of spectrums, whether it's in the open source or whether it's across other platforms that we utilize, whether that's Ionix, whether that is Snoop, whether that is looking at social media, whether that is looking at online payment platforms, et cetera. And by linking all of that instantly in real time, that provides investigators in your countries the ability to then subsequently open investigations or augment ongoing investigations where those targets are originating. In other words, we're not looking for another seizure. We're looking to shut down their online platforms, and we're also looking to shut down those systems and those manufacturings at the site. What we want to be able to do in the future is to take GRID's targeting assist, which we use in-house, and link that through Ionix so that all governments are able to do that. In other words, each of your officers would automatically be empowered with automatic searches that would look for their targets automatically without them having to search. And we also want to further connect that with ping, which is the ability for us to do this globally. This is a system right now, which is called our pre-flight incident notification gateway. We're working with the Universal Postal Union to enable, so that this will automatically, before it's loaded into a container, before it's put on an airplane, ping against the communications already in Ionix to identify whether there are linkages and what those linkages look like, so that before it gets loaded on a plane, it can be flagged for secondary inspection. Now, all of these tools, all of these systems, and all these services require training. You can't just unload a new product or a new system on officers and expect them to use it. So we provide a variety of different trainers and in-depth training materials that are available in UN languages and additional languages for frontline officers. And our RTO network of officers, like Sheila from last week, work directly with your officers in your country, whether they're law enforcement, whether they're customs or regulatory enforcement officers, to ensure they have access and proper training, not only to handle these tools, but also to make the interdictions at the field level. We offer these all in water-resistant format and humidity-resistant format. They're in 6 UN languages, plus additional languages such as Bahasa, German, Khmer, Portuguese, Thai, Urdu, Vietnamese, and others. And the best part about these tools is they've been field tested. So instead of having a tool that has not been actually used in the field, we've worked with WCO and we work with the Universal Postal Union to test these tools and these training materials in the field. Additionally, we make those tools available online through a system called Elite, which is our online training system, so that once we're gone, they still have access to all of that training material virtually, and they can download those materials as well. In addition, those are all accessible fully through their online system, either at a desktop or also on their mobile applications in a variety of UN languages. And what that means is that officers are networked and have the ability to engage with other officers around the world in real time. They can be facilitated with our RTOs like Sheila last week, who talked about this particular ketamine takedown, which was based on an Ionix communication, which got augmented with additional information. Our RTOs connected the officers. The officers then took action in their own countries, and now we're facilitating backtrack investigations in other countries. Without the Ionix system, without the network of officers in the RTO field presence, we wouldn't be able to have these kinds of significant takedowns and facilitate those kind of investigations. And those officers would not know that these things were happening in their country. Those other program outcomes, as I just showed you from the one incident from India, are not in isolation. We have many, many takedowns globally through the exchange of intelligence, either through Ionix or through the exchange of intelligence with our private sector partners. And we continue to support those exchanges, and we appreciate the support that we've received from a number of governments, including the United States and others, to make this possible over the last few years. So with that, I am going to stop my video, stop my share, and take any questions I may have had. I apologize if I went quickly, but I'm happy to take any questions you may have. Thank you.
Gracias, estimado Matt, por tu presentación. Creo que todas las herramientas presentadas desde la JIFE pues es una gran opción y oportunidad para los países en este tema de drogas o nuevas sustancias psicoactivas. En este espacio queremos como que por favor si tienen preguntas, los que estamos acá presentes en la reunión, es el momento, si desean tanto de la presentación.